Michelle, thank you. And it is a testament to the fantastic work that you and Results for America are doing to have such an incredible gathering. I was just hearing excitedly about all the terrific work that you've talked about this morning. And I absolutely could not have missed coming here today to talk to you about the work that we're doing broadly across the administration. And I think to start with, I have to recognize that by nature of the job, every OMB director is an evidence person, right? I mean, if you look across the jobs that we do, we focus on resource constraints. We strive to find ways to make sure every dollar is spent as effectively as possible. But as I think you've heard this morning, this is an administration that from top to bottom believes in the power of evidence to help solve great challenges, to make people's lives better and our economy stronger. The president's been very clear that evidence should drive policy decisions so that we do more of what works and we stop doing what doesn't. Evidence-driven policy is also part of a broader vision that the president has of a modern 21st century government, one that taps emerging technology and innovation to help the federal government better deliver for the American people. And in an environment where there's been a dramatic increase in the sheer amount of data available, but also a dramatic improvement in the tools that allow us to learn from that data, the president's charge to his team has been to unlock the full potential of this data to solve our biggest challenges. And so the administration's embraced this approach in a way that no previous administration has. From the beginning of the administration, we worked with agency leaders to set clear and measurable performance goals, engaged with them regularly to review their performance using data and evidence, and focused on implementation actions that would improve outcomes. Across the administration, we made huge strides in modernizing our ability to analyze data and incorporating evidence into all parts of decision-making. If you ask me, I think we will leave behind a truly impressive legacy on the creation and use of evidence for the next administration to build on. I will say as well, on a personal level, nothing makes the power of evidence and the importance of acting on it more evident to me than the transformation of the work that I've seen in addressing homelessness in our country. This is an issue that I started working on as a volunteer in a homeless shelter in college more than 30 years ago. And at that point, if somebody had come up to me and said, "We're going to have a strategy to end homelessness," I would have told them it was a fantasy. It reminds me that there was a pervasive sense across everyone who worked on this issue that homelessness was seen as just an intractable problem, one that was approached with a great deal of passion and compassion, but often little analytical rigor. In fact, many people believed that a number of folks living on the streets simply just wanted to be homeless and that there was nothing we could do. It was driven, as I said, largely by a worthy desire to ameliorate human suffering, but we lacked a larger picture, a larger goal of the possibility of ending homelessness. It was a problem crying out for a strategy based on the concrete sense of what worked, but like many issues, we just didn't have the evidence that we needed. Contrast that with where we are today on homelessness and so many other issues. We're not only utilizing evidence to drive performance, but we're going beyond the point of a narrow look at singular federal programs as effective or ineffective. In other words, we're going beyond just saying this program works and this program doesn't, to instead focus on identifying and implementing effective strategies within programs, examining how to apply those lessons across programs, and then taking action in a more comprehensive and cross-cutting way. Our approach is guided by three simple principles. First, where we have strong evidence of what works, we act on it. Second, where we need more evidence of what works, we build it. And third, where we can expand capacity so that this work will be easier going forward, we invest in it. You can see those principles in action in the administration's support for programs that already have solid evidence of effectiveness behind them. This includes large-scale programs like SNAP, Medicaid, the Earned Income Tax Credit, and housing assistance, which all have a strong research base showing that they improve a range of both short-term and long-term outcomes, including, importantly, some key long-term health and education outcomes for our lowest income kids. When we talk about evidence, it's critical to recognize what is working and ensure that we continue to build on those strengths. You can also see those principles in action in our budget, where we put forward proposals to expand summer nutrition assistance for children, expand the EITC for childless adults and non-custodial parents, and expand housing assistance to eliminate family homelessness. Each of these proposals is grounded in a strong evidence base of what works. Second, you can see those principles in action in this administration's efforts to innovate in areas where we need to know more about what works to address serious challenges we face. This includes new models that we've introduced and fostered, such as tiered evidence grants. By putting resources to work testing new models with high potential, further testing interventions that have emerging evidence of effectiveness, and scaling up where there's proven evidence that an approach delivers impact, the tiered evidence model is already being used to help build the evidence base in the spheres of education, maternal and child health, and international development. Third and finally, to continue our progress, we need to make it easier and cheaper to build and use evidence, both within the federal government and outside of it. Just because the federal government owns certain data doesn't mean we have all the answers for how to use it effectively to address important needs. And that means often we need to do a better job of sharing data across the federal government. That means both legislatively and with actions that agencies can already take, as you heard this morning. We need to be doing more to share evidence across the government to know in many different spheres how programs are impacting the people and the communities that we serve. But we also need to be sharing that data outside of government if we're really going to have the impact that we want. In fact, the President feels strongly that the federal government has a critical role in convening and catalyzing folks in the private sector and the nonprofit sector to be part of the broader civic community in tackling some of our biggest challenges. That's why we'll continue to invest in improvements in data quality, accessibility, and safeguards to safely unlock the full potential of federal data. We're already working to expand and improve the Census Bureau's infrastructure to make high-quality data more easily available to outside researchers, a major building block in advancing evidence-based work. We've also launched a new data initiative called the Opportunity Project, which is an effort facilitated by the Census Bureau to put more tools and more information in the hands of local stakeholders. In addition to making certain open federal and local data sets accessible from a single site, the Opportunity Project has over a dozen new private and nonprofit digital tools to help families, local leaders, and others navigate information about access to critical resources. For example, the real estate company Redfin just released Opportunity Score, a tool that shows users jobs they can get to from their home, any home or apartment, without a car in 30 minutes or less. This goes to show that whether it's a citizen, a startup, or an established organization, making our open data sets accessible is critical to empowering people to identify and solve problems, meet families' needs, and even hold us, the federal government, accountable. I encourage you to check it out and see what kinds of tools your organization might be able to contribute. Opportunity.census.gov. I want to take a moment now to focus on, in particular, on one specific example of how the administration sought to put these three principles I've talked about into action, and that's on pay-for-success financing. Pay-for-success can help move government away from paying for activities or processes and towards paying for meaningful and measurable outcomes. Under this financing model, upfront services are typically funded by philanthropies or other investors who are then repaid plus a return using government funds only if the outcomes are met. As a tool to help communities drive towards programming that works, pay-for-success financing can help draw on capital to test promising innovations and to build evidence. It can incentivize local communities to really engage with their own data and build their capacity for analysis and understanding. It's funny what happens when you say you're only going to get paid if you have the evidence things work. Money has that kind of effect. People pay attention to the data. They do what it takes to get the evidence that they need when the payments are at stake. And it can be a powerful tool for scaling up things that we know work. Pay-for-success financing is not a panacea, especially early on as new strategies and interventions are tested. We need to ensure that we aren't displacing critical dollars that now flow to families and communities. But paying for outcomes and experimenting with new financing mechanisms can be a promising approach for communities trying to test new ways to solve challenging problems, like recidivism, unemployment, and chronic homelessness, where the right interventions cannot be funded neatly within an existing stream or program. This administration helped launch some of the earliest pay-for-success financing projects and continues to support states and localities in developing, implementing, and evaluating projects. By funding experienced grant-making institutions' work with state, local, and nonprofit partners, the Corporation for National and Community Services Social Innovation Fund, or CIF, has been a key resource in the administration's work to help build a robust pipeline of potential pay-for-success projects. That's why I'm pleased to announce that as of today, the CIF is adding 11 new pay-for-success feasibility studies across the country and across issue areas. Together with 14 other feasibility studies announced just last week, this nearly doubles the total number of CIF-supported feasibility studies and expands the number of state and local projects receiving developmental support to 67. These new projects range from student health and wellness in Baltimore, to home visiting programs in Tennessee, to reading proficiency for at-risk children in Boise, Idaho. Doubling the number of feasibility studies is significant indeed, not only because it strengthens our pipeline of potential projects, but also because it builds capacity on the ground for government and service providers to delve into their data and better understand how local needs, results, and funding fit together. Beyond feasibility studies, CIF is also funding the actual structuring of deals and the construction of legal contracts for 9 projects, one of which just recently launched in Denver. Even if a study doesn't lead to an actual pay-for-success project, communities tell us that the skills and orientation toward outcomes that they develop through the feasibility study have lasting effects in how they approach their work. I want to congratulate these communities and the CIF for its leadership in this area. To build on this work and further support testing of pay-for-success models, the administration's also proposed a $300 million pay-for-success incentive fund to directly support state, local, and tribal projects. The incentive fund would let government provide support, including outcome payments, credit enhancement, and evaluation, to simulate the effect of tapping federal funding streams. Thanks to the support of many folks in this room today, the incentive fund is an idea that's gained a lot of traction, including bills that have been introduced into both houses of Congress with bipartisan support. As with so many other things, the last step is figuring out how to pay for it. Too often, a good idea like the incentive fund can be kept from enactment when partisanship is injected into the conversation around offsets. The incentive fund was conceived and developed in a shared spirit of good government, and we hope that that same spirit will get it over the finish line this year. With support from members on both sides of the aisle, Congress should be able to find a path that doesn't come at the expense of programs that serve vulnerable communities and families. So in closing, I want to thank everyone here for the work that you're doing to advance evidence-based policymaking. The community that you represent that has come together around evidence building, innovation, and capacity building has continued to grow and strengthen. This community has pushed the administration to go further and is a part of our legacy on evidence. And our legacy on evidence and the advances that we've made over the past 7 years, I believe will turn out to be an important part of President Obama's legacy overall. It may have felt a bit like we were working in the dark when I started in that homeless shelter more than 30 years ago. But we have come a long way. The power of evidence and its ability to impact people's lives was something I saw so clearly starting as HUD Secretary and now as OMB Director. And most profoundly at all, perhaps, on this issue of homelessness, when I came into the job as HUD Secretary, I remember sitting down with the President and then Secretary Shinseki at Veterans Affairs. And we actually agreed with our teams for the very first time to set a goal not to put a Band-Aid on veterans' homelessness, but to have a real plan to end veterans' homelessness within 5 years. We came together using our HUD-STAT process each month to make sure that we were tracking outcomes, and it was amazing what we could learn. We'd see, hey, something is going on in Phoenix or in Salt Lake City. They're way ahead of the rest of the country. We'd send a team out, look at the evidence there, understand what was working, spread those practices to other parts of the country. We'd find out places where things weren't working, go in, analyze with them, try to bring best practices, all based on this evolution that evidence, the data could tell us if we really paid close attention. And where are we today? In just 5 short years, we've gotten to a place where almost half of the veterans sleeping on our streets around this country are now housed. Almost half. We have 20 local communities and 2 states that have completely ended veteran homelessness. Remarkable. Results like that speak to the power of evidence. Evidence is transforming our approach to tackling some of the nation's greatest challenges. It is enabling our success in overcoming them, and it is helping the federal government more effectively deliver on its promises to the American people. You know, so often as OMB Director, I'm approached with the challenge that we have with our fiscal deficit in this country. But I often worry about something even more threatening to us, which is the trust deficit that too many Americans have in their federal government. This work that you're doing, this work that we're talking about today, is the single best way that we can attack that trust deficit in the federal government. We can show the American people that the work that we're doing works, that it's making a difference in the lives of families, of communities across this country. And if we keep doing that, if we grow this movement, we will be able to restore the faith of the American people in the work that we do in the public sector. Thank you.